Proactive intervention needs to happen inside the house as well. What do I mean by that? That part of true leadership, that proactive intervention, is diffusing potential conflicts before they happen. That's easy to understand when you have a multiple dog household, right? You need to prevent conflict before it happens. If you don't have multiple dogs in your house, this can come into play with kids and dogs as far as you need to prevent potential conflict in the way that your kids react and interact with your dog. For instance, if the dog has a bone, leave them alone, right? I don't know what those are called, but there's a term for that. You know, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. That's one that's very easy for kids to remember. If the dog has a bone, leave them alone. It helps remember. So preventing potential conflict. This happens when we have multiple dog households. If I see one dog who is okay, so I'll give you an example out of my own household. Jasper was my soul dog, and he was very sensitive about his space. And it was not uncommon when he was young. As he started to go into adolescence, I noticed this behavior, and I would be sitting on the couch and he would be snuggled up next to me, like with his head on my lap or whatever. And I'm, of course, digging it. I'm like, oh, yes, I love, right? I love it. And it was ever so subtle, but Maverick would come into the room and Jasper would give a hard stare, sometimes a little growl. Now, if I left that alone, right, he is setting that rule. That is not acceptable. And as much as I love him snuggling with me, when he did that, he had to get off of the couch. Get off the couch. Your access to me is dependent on your behavior. And when you're a jerk to your brother, who just happened to walk in the room, get down. Proactively get down. And so that can seem a little reactive, right? Because I acted after he growled, but I didn't notice the stares until sorry, a wasp just landed on my hand and I'm allergic. So I didn't notice the stares. So there always has to be an incident where you're like, oh, wait, note to self. Now I can step in and, right, intervene in this. And so that was one of those situations where to prevent conflict, because I didn't want it to escalate until there was an altercation between my dogs. Another example, preventing conflict. And this is one that I kind of dropped the ball, but it's a really good example that sticks in my mind. We were dog sitting a dog, and I think I was in the kitchen cooking or something, and Michael had opened the back door, and my Jasper was standing fairly close to the door, and he had opened the door and he had called the visiting dog in, and the visiting dog stopped and wouldn't come in. And Michael got a little frustrated, I think, and was like, come on, get in here. And the dog was like, and he did as he was requested. And because there was a very little sliver of area for him to get past Jasper, he had to walk straight towards Jasper and go past him to get into the house, which Jasper interpreted as a challenge to my space and gave a quick correction. And then when the dog barked back, that little squabble, normally people would be like, hey, don't squabble. But because I wasn't paying attention, I was busy, and as soon as I heard something, I looked over there and I was like, oh, immediately, I knew what the problem was. A better leadership response would have been to ask Jasper to move, proactively intervene. You need to move over here to create more space for the visiting dog to get into the house without being a challenge to you, right? So that is your job, is to diffuse potential conflicts before they happen. It's very similar to children. And when you have multiple dogs, sometimes you just have to treat them like children. If you have two kids squabbling and you don't know who's at fault, they both get in trouble, you know? And so understand that if you are not proactively intervening and preventing potential conflicts for your dogs, in your dog's mind, you are not really the leader in the house. So, hope you have found those examples from my own life helpful. You don't get it perfect all the time. The key is to learn from your experiences and move forward, because you can't have a dog, you can't live this life without making mistakes. The key is learning from them. So, hope you found that helpful. Until next time, may you always have a dog to love.